I woke up at 5 in the morning as usual, even though I hadn't worked in a school for 7 years. My body remembers schedules better than my head. Today I turned 73. A round date if you round to the nearest tenth. In fact, any date is round to me now. At my age, every day can be considered a gift, although sometimes you think it would be better if they didn't. By 10 o'clock, I'd already cleaned up, washed the curtains, and baked my signature pecan pie. It's probably silly to bake a birthday cake for myself, but my family isn't coming until the evening, and I need something to do in the morning. Old age is when time stretches out like pie dough, only it doesn't get any bigger. On my way to the store, I stopped by the newsstand. I don't usually buy lottery tickets. Harold always said it was a tax on people who couldn't count. But today's my birthday, so I thought I'd allow myself this little folly. Happy birthday, Mrs. Quill, said Joe, the salesman. He's known me since I used to scrub the floors in his son's classroom. Let me buy you a coffee. Thank you, Joe. And give me one lottery ticket, please. You? A lottery ticket? He laughed. A day of miracles, no less. Birthday, I corrected, tucking the ticket into my purse. At the store, I bought enough groceries to last me 2 weeks. Wesley always grumbles that I'm saving money on food, but every penny I save is an extra day without having to ask him for help. At home, I put everything in the fridge and decided to take a little nap before my guests arrived. I dreamed of school, hallways waxed to a shine, and kids who don't notice the floor is clean until they spill something sticky on it. The doorbell woke me up around 6 in the evening. Standing on the doorstep was Wesley and his wife. My son is a tall man with a budding bald spot and the perpetually tense face of a man who is always counting money. Lauren is a dyed blonde with a smile that never reaches her eyes. Happy birthday, Mom, Wesley said, awkwardly hugging me. Marilou, you look beautiful. Lauren handed me a paper bag with an expensive store logo on it. It was from Wesley and me. The bag contained a blue sweater. It was the same one they'd given me 3 years ago. I didn't comment on that. Thank you, darlings. Come on in. I made dinner. Don't tell me you spent your entire pension on treats again. Wesley began immediately. Mom, we talked about this. You have to save for a rainy day. I have a rainy day every day, son, I tried to joke, but Wesley didn't smile. Lauren walked straight into the living room and started looking around, as if she were appraising a property for sale. Marilou, this wallpaper is all faded. I could help you with the repairs. I know a contractor who can do it at a discounted price. Thank you, Lauren, but I like the way it is now, I replied, knowing that the reduced price would be followed by an offer to take out a mortgage. My daughter Betty and her husband came next. They live in a neighboring town and visit infrequently. Betty is the exact opposite of Wesley. Soft, a little distracted, always with a book. She brought me a house plan and a homemade card. Sorry, Mom, we couldn't do it anymore, she whispered in my ear. Doug's hours at work had been cut back. That's okay, sweetie. The important thing is that you made it. Last to arrive, when everyone was seated at the table, were my grandson Trenton and my granddaughter Cassie. Cassie is a 19-year-old college student, the daughter of Wesley and Lauren. She immediately threw herself around my neck. Grandma, happy birthday! I'm sorry I couldn't get you a present. All the money went to textbooks. You yourself are the best present, my girl. I stroked her purple hair. Trenton, on the other hand, didn't even say hello. He walked past me, mumbling something under his breath, and I could smell the whiskey. His eyes were red and his movements were jerky. My grandson plopped down in his chair and stared at the phone. Trenton, Wesley said sternly, say hello to Grandma. Hi, Grandma, he mumbled without looking up. Hello, Trenton, I tried to speak calmly. How are you doing? Did you get a job? Fuck you, he mumbled, barely audible, but I could make it out. There was an awkward silence at the table. Wesley pretended not to hear. Lauren rolled her eyes, and Betty started rushing about the new book she was reading. I put the food on plates, the roast I'd been cooking all day, the fresh vegetable salad, the homemade bread. The family ate in silence, occasionally exchanging phrases about the weather and gasoline prices. How is your ex-girlfriend? Wesley suddenly asked Trenton. Is she still working at the hospital? How should I know? Trenton snapped at him. The bitch got everything she wanted in the divorce and now she's acting like a saint. Watch your mouth, Wesley told him, nodding toward Cassie. Come on, Dad, Cassie snorted. Like I don't know those words. Peyton was always a good girl, I said quietly. I'm sorry it didn't work out. Trenton suddenly looked at me with angry eyes. Don't start with me, Grandma. You're always defending her. Maybe you should have adopted her. Trenton. Wesley raised his voice. It's okay. I put my hand on my son's shoulder. Let's not fight on a day like this. After dinner, I brought out the pie and candles. 73 candles would not fit, so I put only 7 and 3, by numbers. Make a wish, Mama, Betty said. I closed my eyes and thought, I wish for one day in my life that something would change. Then I blew out the candles. Everyone clapped and started on the pie. Even Trenton took a piece, though he remained sullenly silent. Mom, Wesley began, pushing the empty plate away, Lauren and I were talking, and we decided you should consider a nursing home. I almost choked on my tea. What? A home for the elderly, Lauren corrected with a fake smile. It's a very nice place with medical care. We found out your pension is almost enough to pay for it. Almost? I questioned. Well, a little difference we'd be adding? Wesley looked embarrassed. It's just that we're worried about you being here alone. What if something happens? What's going to happen to my apartment? I looked right at Lauren. It could be rented out, she answered quickly. That would cover the rest of the rent. So I should give you the apartment and move into a nursing home? Mom, don't be so dramatic, Wesley sighed. We're thinking of your welfare. You're out of your mind, Cassie interjected. Grandmother is still quite independent. Cassandra, Wesley shouted. Stay out of adult conversations. Mom, Betty said quietly. Do you really want to go? If not, then Doug and I... You don't have any money yourself, Wesley interrupted. Where will she live? In your kennel? Stop it. I stood up. I'm not moving anywhere. This is my home, and I'm going to live here until I decide otherwise. See? Lauren flailed her arms. She's getting stubborn. It's the first sign of senile dementia. I don't have dementia. I was outraged. Grandma, Trenton suddenly spoke up. Do you have any money? Everyone turned to him. What? Money, Grandma. Cash. I need $500 right away. Trenton, Wesley began warningly. What do you need money for? I asked. None of your business. He stood up and walked toward me. Just give me the money. I'll pay you back later. I don't have that kind of money, I said honestly. And even if I did, I wouldn't. You'd lose it again at cards. Bitch, he hissed. You're always like this, always playing the saint, but you're the one hogging the money. You think I don't know you got a stash? Trenton! Wesley stood up. Stop it right now! Shut up, Dad, Trenton snapped at him. You said it yourself. She's hiding money. I looked at my son. Is it true? Wesley averted his eyes. I just said you were frugal. Grandma, Trenton grabbed my shoulder. I really need the money. I really do. Otherwise, I'm going to be in trouble. You're already in trouble. I gently removed his hand. You need to get treatment for your addiction, not... I didn't get to finish. Trenton swung around and slapped me across the face. Not hard, more like a slap, but enough to make me stagger and almost fall. There was absolute silence. No one moved. Cassie stared at her brother in horror. Betty covered her mouth with her hand. Wesley froze with his mouth open, and Lauren looked more annoyed than shocked. You hit Grandma, Cassie whispered. Trenton staggered back, looking at his hand as if it were acting separately from him. Yeah, she drove me crazy, he mumbled. Mom, are you okay? Wesley finally came over to me. Yes. I touched my cheek. There was almost no pain, just a burning sensation of shame and resentment. This is out of line, Wesley said. Trenton, you apologize to Grandma right now and leave. Screw all of you. Trenton grabbed his jacket and ran out of the apartment, slamming the door. The remaining half hour passed in awkward attempts to pretend that nothing had happened. Wesley apologized for his son. Lauren said he was just stressed out from the divorce, and Betty suggested calling the police, to which everyone else waved their hands. He needs treatment, I said, for gambling addiction and alcoholism. He's just going through a rough patch, Wesley replied. It'll get better. Soon they began to pack up. No one mentioned the nursing home again. apparently deciding that today wasn't the best day to have this conversation. I'm sorry for ruining the party, Mom, Betty said, hugging me goodbye. We can stay if you want. No, honey, go ahead. You have a work day tomorrow. I'll call you tomorrow, Cassie promised, hugging me tightly. And Grandma, don't take it personally. Trenton's a jerk. When everyone left, I sat back in my chair and let myself cry. Not from the pain. My cheek didn't hurt anymore. It was loneliness. The realization that my family only saw me as a burden. Even my grandson, whom I once rocked in my arms, thinks it's okay to hit me for refusing to give me money to gamble. Wiping away my tears, I fumbled in my apron pocket for the lottery ticket I had bought that morning. For some reason, it reminded me of when Harold was alive and we used to check the lottery tickets every Friday, dreaming of a trip to Hawaii. We never made it there. I turned on the TV just in time for the evening's raffle. The host announced the numbers, and I checked them against my ticket. Then I checked it again. And again, all 6 numbers matched. I had won the jackpot, $1 million. But instead of joy, I felt strangely empty. $1 million. $1 million that Harold and I had dreamed of all our lives. A sum that could change everything. Pay for his medical treatment, allow us to retire early, see the world. Now that money came to me alone, at 73, when my family had just proven that they only saw me as a source of money or a burden, I looked at the happy numbers and thought, what am I going to do with this? Who am I going to tell? Would I give it to Wesley to stick me in a nursing home and manage my money, or to Trenton to spend it on gambling and drinking? The TV screen flashed with the happy faces of past raffle winners. They were smiling, hugging their loved ones, making plans. And I sat alone in my small apartment with $1 million ticket and felt only emptiness. The morning after my birthday, I met with a cheek swollen from tears and the winning ticket under my pillow. All night long, it kept me awake. I hid it in a cookie tin, then in the pocket of an old bathrobe, then took it out again and checked the numbers. Sleep came in spurts, and in the rare moments of forgetfulness, I dreamed of Harold, who for some reason frowned and shook his head. I didn't tell anyone about the winnings, not even Betty, who'd called first thing in the morning to see how I was feeling. Especially Betty. She wouldn't be able to keep a secret like that from her husband, and he'd be sure to blab it to Wesley. And once Wesley found out I had money, he'd either take it away under the pretext of investing it for my own good, or find a way to declare me incompetent. I've lived long enough to know that money changes people, and rarely for the better. Does your cheek hurt? Betty asked me on the phone. It's nothing, I lied, though I felt pain at every touch. Trenton didn't hit it that hard. Mom, that's not normal. He hit you. We have to do something. What do you suggest? Call the police on your own grandson? That would only make things worse. But he has to realize that it's not okay. He's already unhappy. I sighed, not sure why I was defending him. The guy's in trouble. He needs help, not punishment. When I finished talking, I sat down with a cup of tea by the window and looked out at my small kitchen. 37 years of scrubbing school floors and hallways. I come home to scrub again, now my own apartment. Sometimes it feels like my whole life has been spent with a rag in my hands. I remember when Harold got sick. The doctor said it was cancer, stage 4. There was no money for good treatment, just painkillers. And when he died, I was alone with a house I couldn't keep. I had to sell it, move here. Wesley promised to help, but he quickly forgot about it. Lauren always had a way with him, and she thought I was a burden from the start. $1 million. If that money had shown up 17 years ago, things might have been different. Harold would have gotten treatment. We would have kept the house. Maybe we could have even gone to that damn Hawaii he'd always dreamed of. I pulled out the ticket and checked the numbers again. That's right. Jackpot. According to the lottery rules, I had 30 days to claim the winnings. 30 days to decide what to do with the money that could have changed my life if it had shown up sooner. At lunchtime, Cassie called. Grandma, Dad wants me to talk you into a checkup. He thinks you might have a fall or something. And become medically incapacitated so he can take over my apartment? I couldn't keep the bitterness out of my voice. Grandma, you think too badly of him? I know my son, Cassie, and I know how much Lauren wants my apartment, even if it is in an old neighborhood. Cassie was quiet for a moment, then sighed. You know, Grandma, sometimes I feel like I don't know you at all. You've always been so quiet. You've always put up with everything. And now all of a sudden, you're telling the truth. I grinned. Maybe at 73, it's time to stop pretending. Anyway, you should see a doctor. If only because of the blow. What if it's a concussion? There was genuine concern in her voice, and I gave in. Okay, baby. I'll go to the hospital and get checked out. But don't tell your father I said yes because of him. Tell him it's because of you. I persuaded the stubborn grandmother. I went to the hospital the next morning. The Hickory City Hospital is a gray building from the 50s, which is becoming more shabby every year. The inside smells of disinfection and old age. I spent 2 hours in line before I was called to see a general practitioner. Dr. Harris, a young woman who looked like she hadn't slept in days, quickly examined my cheek. It's a bruise, Mrs. Quill. It's nothing serious. But given your age and the fact that there was a blow to the head, I'd recommend a CT scan, just to be sure. Is that necessary? I didn't want to spend money on tests that Wesley would use against me. It's better to be safe, especially if you live alone. She wrote out a referral, and I had to wait another 2 hours before I was called in for a CT scan. When it was over, I was told to wait in the hallway for the results. I found a free seat on a bench next to the coffee machine and closed my eyes. Hospitals always exhausted me. Too many memories of Harold's last months. Mrs. Quill? I heard a familiar voice. Is that you? I opened my eyes. Standing before me was a young woman in a medical uniform, Peyton Finch, Trenton's ex-wife. Her brown hair was pulled back into a tight ponytail, and her face had dark circles under her eyes. Peyton! I couldn't hold back a smile. I'd always liked this girl. Hardworking, smart, too good for my grandson. You work here? 3 years now. I'm an emergency room nurse. She sat down next to me. What are you doing here? Is everything okay? I instinctively covered my cheek with my hand, but Peyton saw the movement. What happened to your face? She leaned in closer. Is that a bruise? Just a bad fall, I lied. Peyton looked at me questioningly. She'd seen too many of these falls in her job to believe it. Mrs. Quill, if someone... I did fall, I interrupted, not wanting her to know the truth about her ex-husband. Became clumsy in my old age. Peyton nodded, clearly not believing it, but didn't insist. Are you taking a break? I asked to change the subject. Why don't we get some coffee? My treat. We settled into the small hospital cafeteria. Peyton looked tired, but her eyes still shone with that inner strength I'd always appreciated in her. How are you doing since the divorce? I asked gently. I heard it wasn't easy. Peyton smiled sadly. It could have been worse. At least we didn't have kids. Trenton, he was always a difficult child. I didn't know how to say that my grandson was a spoiled egomaniac. Wesley spoiled him too much after his divorce from his first wife. That's not the point, Mrs. Quill. Peyton sipped her coffee. Trenton, he's got a problem. Gambling addiction, alcohol. When he lost, he got violent. She said it calmly, but I could see her hands shaking. Did he hit you? I asked her bluntly. Peyton lowered her eyes. Not only hit me, he could hurt with words even better than with his hands. And he cheated all the time. With girlfriends, colleagues, even his neighbor. And then he'd say I drove him crazy. I felt a lump come up in my throat. So much for the Quill family legacy. My son never laid a hand on Lauren, but his passive aggression and manipulation were no better. And now my grandson is repeating those same patterns, only in worse form. I'm sorry, I said, even though I knew my I'm sorry wasn't enough. I didn't realize it was that bad. It's not your fault. Peyton smiled weakly. You've always been good to me. The only one of the Quill family who saw me as a person, not a servant. You deserve better. I took her hand. I hope you meet a good man. I'm not ready for a new relationship yet, she shook her head. Right now I'm focused on work and my project. Project? I was interested. Peyton's eyes suddenly lit up. It's my dream, Mrs. Quill. I want to create a support center for women survivors of domestic violence. Not just a shelter. There aren't many of those around here, but there are some. But a place where women can get psychological help, legal advice, support in finding a job, a place where no one would judge them and say, "Why didn't you leave earlier?" She spoke about it with such enthusiasm that I smiled involuntarily. It's a wonderful idea, Peyton. I've already started gathering information, talking to psychologists who could volunteer. I even have a place in mind, an old insurance company office, which is empty now. But, but you need money, I finished for her. A lot of money, Peyton sighed. Rent, repairs, equipment, salary for at least one permanent employee. I'm saving what I can, but on my nurse's salary, it's going to take 10 years at least. I looked at her and saw myself as a young woman, just as full of hope, with dreams that were shattered by reality. Harold and I wanted to open a small coffee shop. We even found a space, drew up a business plan, and then Wesley was born, followed by Betty, and the dreams had to be put on hold. Forever, as it turned out. Don't give up, I said. If it's really your dream, there's a way to make it come true. Peyton squeezed my hand gratefully. Thank you, Mrs. Quill. Your support is very important to me. Call me Marilu, please. We're no longer officially related, but I still consider you part of the family, a part I'm proud of. Her eyes filled with tears. Thank you. Meryl, I wish all Quills were like you. At that moment, I was called to see Dr. Harris. The CAT scan showed nothing serious, just a soft tissue contusion. I said goodbye to Peyton, promising to stop by the hospital sometime just to chat. All the way home, I thought about our conversation and what I saw in that young woman's eyes. The same pain I'd carried around for decades. The same frustration. The same stubbornness. Peyton was trying to turn her pain into something useful. Something that would help others. What did I do with my pain? I just learned to live with it, to tolerate it, to be silent. At home, I took out a lottery ticket and stared at it for a long time. $1 million. Money that could have changed my life if it had come sooner. But maybe it wasn't too late. Maybe they could change someone else's life. The life of a woman who so resembles me as a young woman, but who still has a chance to take a different path. I imagined telling Wesley about the winnings, his eyes lighting up with greed, Lauren starting to make plans for my money, Trenton demanding his cut, and how it all ends, a nursing home for me and a squandered inheritance for them. Then I imagined another scenario, a support center for women survivors of abuse, a place where they could find the help I myself had missed when Harold threw things at me in fits of rage and then begged for forgiveness. A place where Peyton could realize her dreams and other women could find their way to a new life. The decision came unexpectedly easily. The next day, I called the lottery company and learned the procedure for claiming my winnings. It was explained to me that I could choose a lump sum or receive the money in installments over 20 years. The first option meant a smaller sum, about $600,000 after taxes, but all at once. I chose it. I had to drive to the lottery's main office in a neighboring town. I told Betty I was going to the county hospital for a checkup, and she didn't ask any questions. At the office, I was asked to sign a bunch of papers. Had my picture taken with a giant cardboard check. I insisted that the photo not be published, and explained that the money would be deposited into the account within 2 weeks. Opening a bank account, not the one where my modest savings were kept and where my pension came in, but a brand new one, I felt strangely calm. For the first time in years, I was making a decision that was all about me. I didn't consult with my children. I didn't think about what the neighbors would say. I didn't worry about what the family would think. When all the formalities were settled, I went outside and took a deep breath. My cheek still hurt, but the pain seemed distant, inconsequential. A plan was already forming in my head. What to say to Peyton, how to explain the sudden wealth, how to help her realize her dream without arousing the family's suspicion. I knew it wouldn't be easy, that Wesley wouldn't stop trying to control me, that Trenton could be dangerous if he found out about the money, that I'd have to lie to the people I still loved in spite of everything. But for the first time in years, I felt truly alive, that I had a purpose, that my life could still matter. I cashed in a small portion of my winnings, $10,000, and hid the money in my apartment. The rest stayed in a new bank account that no one knew existed but me. It was time to take the next step, to call Peyton and set up a meeting. I didn't know how she would react to my offer, but I was willing to take the risk. After all, what do I have to lose? A family that only sees me as a burden? The peace of an old age that feels more like a slow death? No, the real risk would be to change nothing. and I wasn't going to be afraid of change anymore. I wasn't used to inviting people over for dinner. In recent years, my social circle had narrowed to the size of a cup of coffee, just family and the occasional neighbor, Mrs. Dorridge, who stopped by to borrow sugar. So when I dialed Peyton's number, I felt a strange excitement, like a girl asking a date to a dance. We agreed to meet in 2 days at a small restaurant on the outskirts of Hickory Knot, too expensive to avoid questions, but not too cheap to make the conversation serious. Finished talking, I looked at the envelope of money hidden behind the books on the shelf. $10,000 in cash, more than I'd ever held in my hands, but only a fraction of my sudden wealth. I spent the remaining days before the meeting in a strange mixture of anxiety and excitement. The thought that Peyton might refuse, finding my offer too strange or even insulting, kept me on my toes. On the other hand, what did I have to lose? If she said no, I could just find another way to use the money. On the day of the meeting, I wore my best dress, a dark blue dress with a small floral pattern that I usually save for church and special occasions. The bruise on my cheek was almost gone, but I still applied some foundation I'd borrowed from Betty. Looking in the mirror, I could see all the wrinkles, the gray hair, the drooping corners of my lips, the face of a woman who had tolerated too much and demanded too little. But today there was something new in my eyes: determination. I took a cab to the restaurant, another unfamiliar luxury. Peyton was already waiting at a table in the corner. She looked younger without her hospital uniform, in a simple green dress that emphasized her figure. I suddenly thought that she probably had admirers, but she kept them at a distance, afraid of a repeat of the Trenton story. Marilou, she stood up to give me a hug. Thank you for inviting me. It's so unexpected. Thank you for accepting. I sat down across from her. I hope you're not too tired after work. No, I had the morning shift today. I'm just getting my second wind. We ordered food. Nothing fancy, just steaks and wine. Peyton talked about work, difficult cases, and funny stories with patients. I listened, occasionally commenting, but inwardly preparing myself for the conversation for which I'd called her. You seem tense, Peyton said when we reached dessert. Is everything okay? Yeah, it's just... I took a deep breath. I have something serious to talk to you about, Peyton. Her face changed immediately. She tensed up like she was getting ready to strike. Is this about Trenton? Did he do something? No, it's not about him. It's not really about him. I sipped my wine for courage. Remember when you told me about your dream? The Women's Support Center. Peyton nodded, clearly not understanding what I was getting at. I want to help you realize that dream, I said quickly so I wouldn't change my mind. I want to give you the money to open the center. Her eyes widened. What? But, Marilou, that's a lot of money. You don't have it, and I can't. I have money, I interrupted. I recently received an inheritance. An inheritance from a distant relative in Oregon. We weren't close, but she remembered me in her will. The lie came easier to me than I'd expected. Maybe because I'd spent my whole life lying to myself, telling myself that everything was fine, that my family loved me, that I was happy in my little apartment. Inheritance? Peyton looked incredulous. And you want to spend it on my project? Why? Because your idea is important, I leaned closer. Because I know what it's like to live with someone who hurts you, physically or mentally. Because if there had been a center like this in my time, maybe my life would have turned out differently. I never told anyone about what Harold was really like. His breakdowns, how he threw things at me, how he blamed me for all his failures, how he cried and apologized, and I forgave him because I loved him and because I had nowhere else to go with 2 small children. Marilou? Peyton looked shocked. I didn't know. No one knew. We didn't talk about it then. We just tolerated it. I smiled sadly. But times change, and I want the women of today to have choices that I didn't have. Peyton looked at me with new understanding, but there was still doubt in her eyes. I really appreciate the offer, I really do. But it's too much. And your family? My family won't know. I shook my head firmly. It's a condition, Peyton. No one can know that the money is from me. Not Wesley, not Betty, and especially not Trenton. But how do we explain it? Where the money came from? Let's say you got a grant from a charity. Or you found an investor who wants to remain anonymous. We'll think of something. Peyton pushed the dessert away without even touching it. I don't understand, Marilou. If it's your money, why can't you just tell the truth? I sighed. It was time for full disclosure. Because if my son finds out I have the money, he'll do anything to take it for himself. He's already trying to convince me to sign the apartment over to him and move into a nursing home. And if he finds out about the inheritance, I shook my head. He'll declare me incompetent or convince me that I should invest the money through him. Either way, neither I nor your center will see them. And Trenton, Peyton added quietly, if he finds out you have the money, he won't back off until he gets his cut. Exactly, I nodded. That's why this has to stay between us. I'll help you with the center, and you help me keep the secret. Peyton was silent for a long time, pondering my offer. I could see the thoughts swirling in her head as she weighed the pros and cons. What if I say no? She finally asked. What would you do with the money? I'd find another way to use it, I said honestly. The main thing is not to give it to Wesley. Maybe I'll donate it to charity or just spend a little on myself. For the first time in my life, I have a choice, and I don't want to lose it. Peyton looked at me with a new respect. You've changed, Marilou. You never used to speak so forceful. When you're 73, you start to realize that putting life on hold isn't the best strategy. I smiled. So what do you say? Are you ready to take me up on my offer? I need to think about it. She bit her lip. It's very generous, but it's also very strange. I'm not sure I understand all the motives. I don't have ulterior motives, Peyton. I just want that money to do something good, something important. And your project is exactly that. We agreed that Peyton would take a few days to think about it and give me an answer. As we said goodbye outside the restaurant, she gave me a big hug. Thank you, Marilou. No matter what I decide, thank you for believing in me. I returned home in high spirits. Even if Peyton said no, the fact that I dared to take this step was empowering. For the first time in years, I felt in control of my life. But reality set in the next day when Wesley called. Mom, are you home? Lauren and I are picking you up in an hour. He didn't ask if I was comfortable, just put it in front of me, like he always does. They showed up exactly 1 hour later. Punctuality had always been Wesley's strong suit. Lauren started looking around the apartment right away, like she was figuring out how much she could get for the furniture. Mom, Lauren, and I are seriously concerned, Wesley began as we sat down in the living room. After the incident at your birthday party, you've been different. Different. Different? I raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? Distant, Lauren interjected. Betty said you weren't answering your cell phone. Cassie says you canceled your traditional Sunday meeting. And Mrs. Dorridge's neighbor saw you getting into a cab last night. I looked at her in surprise. Are you following me? Not following, but concerned. Wesley said in the tone he used to use with naughty Cassie. You're a lonely old woman, Mom. There could have been complications from Trenton's stroke, confusion, memory problems. There's nothing wrong with my memory, I said. I called a cab because I was meeting a friend at a restaurant. I'm 73 years old, not 103. I can still go to restaurants. A friend? Lauren looked genuinely surprised. You have girlfriends? Imagine that. I didn't bother to specify that it was the ex-wife of their favorite son. Wesley sighed. Mom, we don't want to argue with you. We're here to talk about the future. Your future. Here it is. I knew that sooner or later they would come back to the subject. My future suits me just fine, I said calmly. I'm healthy, independent, and I want to stay in my own apartment. It's not just that, Wesley looked at his wife. Lauren talked to a lawyer the other day. He said that at your age, you should think about a will about the transfer of property, so you don't have to worry about inheritance taxes. Inheritance taxes? I laughed. Wesley, all I have is this apartment and some savings. What kind of taxes? Right now, yes, but that could change, Lauren interjected. Besides, if we donate it now, we can help with the utility bills. It'll be easier for you. I looked at both of them, the son I'd given birth to and raised, and his wife, who'd always looked at me as a nuisance. Did they really think I would give them the last thing I had? No, I said firmly. I won't sign the apartment over to anyone. When I die, You'll inherit it. And as long as I'm alive, it's still mine. Wesley's face contorted. Mom, don't be selfish. It's for your own good. If something happens to you, if you get sick, who's going to pay for your treatment? We just want to secure your future. And ours, I added. Mostly mine. What are you talking about? Lauren pressed her lips together. We've always cared about you. Have we? I looked at her point blank. When was the last time you took me out to dinner just for fun and not because there was an occasion? When was the last time you, Wesley, helped me with a repair or just called to see how I was doing? Caring isn't just words, it's actions. And your actions show that you see me only as a burden and a source of inheritance. Wesley blushed. You're unfair. We have our own work, our own problems. We can't all the time. But you can find time to come and demand to rewrite the apartment, I interrupted. Interesting priorities. I see this conversation isn't going to work, Lauren stood up. You're too stubborn, Marilou, and you seem to be losing touch with reality. On the contrary, I stood up too. For the first time in years, I'm seeing reality very clearly, and I don't like it. Wesley looked confused. Mom, what's going on with you? You've never talked like this before. Maybe I should have started earlier. I walked toward the door. Now, if you don't mind, I still have things to do. After they left, I sat back in my chair, feeling a strange mixture of devastation and pride. I'd never confronted my son so openly before. Always yielded, agreed, tolerated. But something had changed after that ill-fated birthday. It was as if Trenton's blow had shattered the wall of fear and doubt I'd been building for decades. That evening, Peyton called. Marilou, I've been thinking about your proposal. I held my breath. And? I agree. Her voice sounded resolute. But I have conditions. First, we'll formalize everything legally clean through a loan or investment agreement. Secondly, I want you to be involved in the project, not just give money and forget. And thirdly, if the center starts to bring profit, I will return you every cent. I smiled. I agree to all the conditions, especially the second one. I'd like to be a part of it. Then let's meet tomorrow and discuss the details. I hung up the phone and went to the window. It was getting dark outside, the streetlights were coming on. The world outside the window seemed the same, but I myself had changed. For the first time in years, I had a goal, a plan, a hope for something new. And even if Wesley and Lauren thought I was an old woman out of my mind, I knew what I was doing. Tomorrow begins a new chapter in my life, and in that chapter, I won't just be a mother, a grandmother, or a widow. I will be myself, Marilou Quill, a woman who finally has a chance to do something really important. The first weeks after our conversation with Peyton flew by in a flurry of pleasantries. We found a lawyer who helped us file all the paperwork. On his advice, we set up a charitable foundation through which the funding was funneled. Officially, I was just a volunteer. Peyton was fully immersed in organizational issues, renting a room, renovation, purchasing furniture, obtaining permits. The space was found quickly. A former insurance company office on the first floor of a 2-story building. Not the most prestigious area, but quiet and with good transport links. There were 3 small apartments on the second floor, one of which had just become vacant. It's fate, Peyton said. You could live right above the center, Marilou. Then you wouldn't have to drive across town every day. I thought about it. Moving wasn't in my plans, but the idea was tempting. My current apartment held too many memories, most of them bleak. As the renovation progressed, I helped in any way I could, picking out furniture, sorting through donations, planning the arrangement. For the first time in years, I felt truly needed. Not just an old woman who was tolerated out of politeness, but a person whose opinion mattered. New people gradually appeared at the center. Martha the psychologist, Jennifer the lawyer, a few student volunteers. They all thought I was just a lonely older woman who decided to take time to do good deeds. No one knew that it was my money that gave life to this place. The more time I spent at the center, the stronger my desire to break with the past became. One day, I made up my mind. Peyton, I want to rent that apartment upstairs. She brightened up. Really? That would be great, but what will your family say? They don't have to know right away, I shrugged. I'd say my friend offered to live with her. Technically, that's not even a lie. You're my friend. I scheduled the move for Wednesday, a day when Wesley was usually busy at work. I didn't have much stuff: clothes, a few books, pictures, dishes. The rest I decided to keep or give away. Peyton helped with the organization. She found a small van and two sturdy students. The whole night before the move, I couldn't sleep. In the morning, I took one last walk around the apartment I'd lived in for 17 years. Strangely, I didn't feel sad or nostalgic, just relieved. It was like dropping a heavy backpack after a long journey. The trip took only 3 hours. By lunchtime, I was already sitting in my new apartment, surrounded by boxes, feeling strangely young. The center officially opened a week after I moved in. Peyton threw a small celebration. Local reporters, social services representatives, and a few doctors from the hospital came. I kept a low profile. It was Peyton's day, her triumph. She glowed as she talked about the center's plans. Looking at her, I felt a warm wave of pride, not just for her, but for myself. My family didn't learn of my move until 3 days later, when Betty stopped by for a visit and found my apartment empty. She immediately called me in a panic. "Mom, where are you? What happened? The place is empty." "I moved, honey," I replied calmly. "I got a new apartment." "What? Where? Why didn't you say anything?" "Because I knew you'd object. I wanted to get settled before I told you." "But where did you move to? And with what money?" "I had some savings, and the new apartment is cheap, smaller than the old one, but in a good neighborhood. I live with a friend." "A friend? What friend?" "Mom, you never said you had a friend you wanted to live with." "There are a lot of things I didn't say." I tried to sound calm. "Look, Betty, I'll give you the address. Come down this weekend and I'll explain everything. Just, uh, don't tell Wesley yet, okay?" Of course, the mystery didn't last long. That evening, a furious Wesley called. "What the hell is going on, Mom? Betty says you moved out of the apartment? Without warning? With some friend?" "Yes, Wesley," I sighed. "I moved out. It's my life and my decision." "But why? We were talking about a nursing home if you're lonely, not about you moving in with some stranger." "She's not a stranger, and I don't need a nursing home. I need the freedom to do what I want." "Is this about that conversation? Is this about the apartment? We were just trying to help." "No, Wesley. This isn't about the conversation. It's about my whole life, which I've spent taking care of others and forgetting about myself. Now I want to live for myself. Is that so hard to understand?" Saturday, I met Wesley and Betty at a coffee shop near the center. I didn't want to show them my new apartment yet. "You've lost weight," Betty remarked, "and you've changed your hair." "I like the way I look." I did get a short haircut and new clothes. "Mom?" Wesley was serious. "We're worried. This sudden move, some mysterious friend, it's not like you." "Maybe you just didn't know the real me." I sipped my coffee. "People change, Wesley, even at 73. "What's her name?" Wesley squinted at me. Patricia," I lied, using Peyton's middle name, which she'd never used. "Patricia," Wesley repeated incredulously. "And how old is she?" 31. But what does that matter? The conversation continued in the same vein for another hour. Wesley demanded explanations, Betty tried to reconcile us, and I was evasive. In the end, they left disappointed and concerned, and I left feeling like I'd been interrogated. The next 2 weeks passed relatively quietly. The center gradually gained momentum. There were regular visitors, support groups, and regular counseling sessions. I was completely immersed in my work, forgetting about my fears and doubts. Peyton joked that I was working harder than she was. "You look younger, Marilou," she said one evening as we were closing the center. "I've never seen you so alive." "Because I'm finally really living, not existing," I replied. "Thank you for giving me this chance." "You gave me a chance." Peyton squeezed my hand. "Without you, none of this would have happened." But the happiness didn't last long. A day later, while I was sitting at the receptionist's desk, the door to the center opened and Trenton walked in. He was drunk, his eyes red, his hair disheveled. "So this is where you've been hiding, Grandma." He grinned, looking around. "I wondered where you disappeared to." "Trenton, what are you doing here?" "Checking to see if what they told me was true." He stepped closer. "That my grandmother and my ex are doing some business together. Interesting coincidence, huh?" That's when Peyton came out of her office. When she saw Trenton, she froze. "What are you doing here?" "Oh, you're here too," he turned to her. "Hey, sweetheart, long time no see?" "Go away," Peyton said firmly. "This is private property. You're not welcome here." "Not welcome? I thought you'd be happy to have a family reunion, especially you, Grandma, after you left the apartment without even saying goodbye." "I don't have to answer to you," I said calmly. "Oh, really? What about Dad?" "You know, he's pretty upset. He thinks you're crazy. I think it's something else. Something to do with money." "Where'd you get it from, Grandma? For this center? For the new apartment?" At that moment, two women, regular attendees of the support group, entered the center. They stopped in the doorway, looking at the scene in surprise. "Ladies, I apologize." Peyton tried to smile. "We have a little misunderstanding. Why don't you come back later?" "No, no, let them stay." Trenton grabbed my arm. "Let them hear the hypocrisy of what's going on here. A rape crisis center, my ass. And you're covering up for rapists in your own family." "What are you talking about?" I was genuinely puzzled. "Harold, of course, your hubby who used to beat you up when he was drunk. Don't you think I know? Daddy used to tell me how Grandpa used to take it out on you, and you put up with it, smiling, pretending everything was fine. And now you're judging me? I'm cold." Wesley told him, of course he did. Male solidarity. "The difference is," I said slowly, "your grandfather was at least remorseful, and you think you have the right to let loose." "Don't start." Trenton squeezed my hand tighter. "You better tell me where the money came from. Did Harold leave a stash that no one knew about?" "Let her go." Peyton stepped forward. "Let her go right now." "Or what? You gonna call the police? Go ahead." "I'd love to tell them how my grandmother, a retired janitor, suddenly found the money to fund an entire center. That would make for a very interesting story." That's when something in me snapped. All my life I've been patient, silent, forgiving. I've let the men in my family push me around, make decisions for me, humiliate me. That's enough. "You know what, Trenton?" I looked him straight in the eye. "You're right. There's a story worth telling. The story of how my grandson hit me on my 73rd birthday because I refused to give him gambling money. And about how his father, my son, pretended it was no big deal. And how I decided I'd had enough." I turned to the women still standing in the doorway. "Ladies, this is my grandson, Trenton Quill. A prime example of what we're trying to protect you and your daughters from here. A man who thinks he can solve his problems with his fists and then demand forgiveness and money." "Shut up," Trenton hissed, tugging on my arm. "No, I won't." I yanked my hand away. "Enough. I'd been silent my whole life. Silent when Harold took it out on me. Silent when Wesley grew up to be just as callous. Silent when you turned into your grandfather without his conscience. But I won't be silent anymore." I turned to Peyton. "Yes, I have money. Money that I won in the lottery the day I was born, the same day my grandson hit me, and my family pretended it didn't happen. So I decided to spend that money on something really worthwhile. Something that would help women who were in the same situation I was once in get out of it sooner than I did." Trenton's face contorted with rage. "The lottery? You won the lottery and you didn't tell us? How much?" "Enough to start a new life." I straightened up. "And you ain't getting a dime, Trenton. Not you, not your father. You old—" He took a swing, but Peyton was quicker, stepping between us. "Don't even think about it." Her voice was quiet but firm. "Jane," she turned to one of the women, "would you be so kind as to call the police? Tell them we have an aggressive man making violent threats." Trenton froze, lowering his hand. "You're bluffing." "Check it out." I smiled at him. "This time I won't keep quiet. And I won't cover for you like I covered for your grandfather. Enough." He looked at me as if he was seeing me for the first time. Maybe he was seeing the real Marilou Quill at last, not the dutiful grandmother who was willing to put up with everything. "This isn't over," he said at last. "Daddy will find out about everything. And the money and the fact that you're mixed up with that." He nodded at Peyton. "Let him find out," I shrugged. "I have nothing to hide anymore. Nothing to be afraid of." Trenton took another look around the center, then turned and walked out, slamming the door so hard the glass rattled. There was silence. Peyton was the first to break it. "Are you okay, Marilou?" "Yeah." I suddenly felt oddly relieved. Better than I'd ever been. After Trenton's visit, I knew the storm was inevitable. The very next day, the phone was ringing off the hook. Wesley, Lauren, Betty, even Cassie. Everyone wanted to know the truth. I turned off the phone and warned Peyton that the next few days would be difficult. "They're coming here," I told her. "The whole family. And it's not going to be an easy conversation. We can handle it." Peyton squeezed my hand tightly. "You're not alone, Marilou. I wasn't wrong." Wesley showed up at the center 2 days later when we were holding a support group for new female visitors. He stormed into the room where I was sitting at the receptionist's desk like a hurricane ragged, red with anger, wild-eyed. "Is it true?" He didn't even say hello. "You won the lottery and didn't tell us? Did you get involved with this Trenton's ex?" I got up slowly. "Hello, Wesley. Yes, it's true. I won the lottery the day I was born. And yes, I decided to spend the money on the Peyton Center." "How much?" He came close. "How much did you win?" "Enough." I wasn't going to go into detail. And I'd already invested most of it in the center. Wesley's face contorted. Are you crazy? It's family money. You had no right." "Family money?" I raised an eyebrow. "As I recall, I bought the ticket with my own money, and I won too. How does that make the winnings family?" "You're part of the family." He was practically screaming. "We are your heirs. Everything that is yours ultimately belongs to us." "Only after I die," I replied calmly. "And while I'm alive, I'll manage my money as I see fit." Wesley began to pace the small space of the waiting room. "It's all her, isn't it?" He nodded toward Peyton's office. "Manipulating you, taking advantage of your naivete. She was always a sneaky bitch." "Watch your mouth," my voice got harsher. "Peyton didn't ask me for anything. I'm the one who offered her money for the center. And if anyone here is trying to manipulate me, it's you, Wesley." He stopped, looking at me with incomprehension. "Why? Why did you choose her over your own family? What did we do to deserve this?" "Do you really want to know?" I sighed. "The fact that none of you even stood up for me when your son hit me the day I was born. That you've seen me as nothing but a burden all these years. That you and Lauren tried to take away the last thing I had, my apartment. Is that reason enough?" Wesley looked confused. "That's not true. We cared about you. We wanted you to move into a nursing home for your own good." "For my own good?" I grinned bitterly. "Or yours? To free up an apartment to rent out? You're being unfair." "No, Wesley. What's unfair is the way you've treated me all these years, like a burden to be endured. It's a good thing I won that money. Now I see the real you." He was silent for a while, then said quietly but threateningly, "I'm going to fight for that money, Mom. You're out of your mind. You let that woman fool you. I'll prove you incompetent. Try me." I didn't look away. "But remember, this is a public trial. Everyone will know how your son hit his grandmother and you pretended it didn't happen." Wesley turned pale, but he didn't back down. "Is this blackmail? No. It's the truth. And you know it." He turned and walked out, slamming the door. I sank slowly into the chair, feeling my hands shaking. Only now did I realize that Peyton had been listening to the whole conversation from her office. She came out, walked over to me, and just hugged me without saying anything. We both knew this was just the beginning. That evening, Betty called. Unlike Wesley, she spoke calmly, even with some understanding. "Mom, I'm not going to say you should have shared it with us. It's your money. But why didn't you at least tell me? Did I give you a reason not to trust me?" "No, honey," I sighed. "But you're married to Doug, and he's friends with Wesley. I couldn't risk it." "So what now? Wesley says he's gonna sue. He's already consulted a lawyer." "Let him sue." I tried to sound more confident than I felt. "He has no grounds. I'm of sound mind and good judgment, and the money's mine. He'll try to argue that you can't handle that kind of money, that you've been defrauded of." Betty hesitated. "That this Peyton woman is manipulating you." "Do you believe that?" I asked bluntly. Betty was silent for a moment, then sighed. "No, I saw the center. Doug took me there this afternoon. Looked at the website on the internet. It's the real deal, Mom. What you're doing is important." My eyes watered. "Thank you, Betty. You don't know how much those words mean to me." "But Mom!" Her voice became anxious. "Wesley won't stop. And neither will Trenton. They'll do anything to take the rest of the money away from you." "Let them try." I tried to sound brave. I have a good lawyer, and the truth is on my side. The next day, the official paper came, a notice to sue. Wesley acted quickly. The suit stated that I, Marilou Quill, was suffering from senile dementia and could not adequately manage my finances, that Peyton Finch had taken advantage of my condition to fraudulently obtain money, and that the court should declare me incompetent and all financial transactions I'd made in recent months null and void. Mr. Dobson, our lawyer, reviewed the documents and reassured us. It's a weak claim, Mrs. Quill. Your son has no proof of your incapacity. We can easily disprove these allegations with a medical examination. What if he bribed the doctors? I asked. Wesley is very persuasive when it comes to money. We'll do an independent examination, Dobson said confidently. And we have witnesses to your full capacity. The staff of the center, volunteers, clients. Don't worry, we'll win this case. But it wasn't just the court case we had to worry about. A week after Wesley's visit, we discovered that someone had broken the windows at the center. The police arrived, took a report, but found no trace. I knew it was Trenton's work. It was too consistent with his threats. 2 days later, one of our visitors, Sarah, told me that a young man had approached her, asking about the center, what we did, whether we charged for our services. The description matched Trenton's exactly. He's trying to find dirt, Peyton said. Something to use against us in court or for a reputational hit. It's a pathetic attempt. I shook my head. We're not hiding anything. All of our finances are transparent, our services are free. But Trenton didn't stop there. The local paper ran a story about a new women's support center in Hickory being linked to questionable funding and possible fraud. No direct accusations, but hints that couldn't help but affect the center's reputation. It's Wesley, I told Peyton. He's got connections in the local press. What do we do? She looked upset. Some of the women have already canceled their visits. They're afraid of trouble. We'll issue a retraction, I said firmly. We'll tell the truth, the whole truth. Peyton and I were interviewed by the same newspaper. We talked about the center, how and why it was created. I spoke openly about my lottery winnings and my decision to invest in something I thought was important. I didn't hide the conflict with my family, but I didn't go into details about the violence. The interview had an effect. The center received support from the local community. Several businessmen offered sponsorship. 3 new volunteers joined us. But Wesley and Trenton weren't backing down either. Their tactics became more sophisticated. Cassie called me the day after the interview came out. Grandma, Dad, and Trenton are going through your former coworkers at school, asking questions about you, trying to find something they can use against you in court. Like what? I was surprised. I worked as a janitor for 37 years, never had a conflict with anyone. They're looking for any signs of forgetfulness, odd behavior, something that could be interpreted as the beginning of dementia. I sighed. Well, let them look. My memory hasn't failed me so far. Grandma, Cassie's voice grew quieter. I wanted to say, I'm on your side. What you're doing with that center is the right thing to do. And the way Daddy and Trenton are acting is disgusting. Thank you, honey. I felt warm in my chest. It means a lot to me. I'll come down this weekend, okay? I want to see downtown. Just see you. The first court hearing was scheduled for the following month. All the while, the attacks on the center continued. Broken windows, nuisance calls, and accidentally slashed tires on Peyton's car. The police came, made reports, but did nothing. There was no direct evidence of Trenton's involvement. Betty tried to mediate, organized a meeting between me and Wesley. But the conversation was inconclusive. Wesley was adamant. He believed that I was under Peyton's influence, that she was manipulating me to get my money. No argument could convince him otherwise. You need to decide, Mom, he told me at the end of the meeting. It's either family or this woman. You can't have both. Are you giving me ultimatums? I looked at him sadly. After everything I've done for you? I'm trying to protect you. He raised his voice. To protect our family inheritance. No, Wesley. You're trying to take what you think is yours. But that money is mine. And I've already made my choice. On the eve of the trial, the worst thing happened. Peyton and I stayed late at the center finishing paperwork for the trial. When we left, we checked all the doors and windows. But when we arrived at work in the morning, we found the place trashed, furniture overturned, Documents strewn about, computers smashed. Whores and thieves was written in paint on the wall. Peyton cried as she looked at the destruction of months of our work. I hugged her, feeling a strange emptiness inside. We had to decide whether to give up or fight on. Give in to Wesley, return the rest of the money, close the center, and try to make peace with the family. Or continue to stand up for what we believe in, risking losing everything. The police took the incident more seriously this time. It was already a real crime, with break-ins and property damage. They promised to investigate, but I didn't hold out much hope for results. Trenton was smart enough to leave no trace. We cleaned all day, silently, each immersed in our own thoughts. When the main mess was cleaned up, we sat down in the empty conference room where group study sessions were usually held. "What do we do next?" Peyton asked, looking at me with tired eyes. I was silent for a long time, gathering my thoughts. "You know, Peyton, all my life I've made compromises. I put up with Harold when he took it out on me. I kept quiet when Wesley grew selfish. I smiled at Lauren when I knew she despised me. I always thought it was the right thing to do for my family, for the world. But what did I end up with? A grandson who beats me for refusing to give me money. A son who sees me only as a purse. A life of fear and loneliness." I took her hand. "I'm not giving up, Peyton. Not this time. Even if it costs me my family. Even if we have to start over." Peyton squeezed my hand in return. "We'll get through this, Marilou. I have a plan." "A plan?" I looked at her in surprise. "Yes," she smiled weakly. "I've been thinking about it ever since the trouble started. We could move. Open a center in another city where they won't find us. Use the money we have left to start over." I thought about it. Moving meant more separation from my family, from Betty, from Cassie, but staying meant living forever under the threat of new attacks, new lawsuits, new vandalism. "We could at least try," Peyton continued. "Take a trip, see other places. Don't decide anything right now." "Okay," I nodded. "Let's give it a shot." We sat in the empty trash center, two women of different generations, united by a common pain and a common goal. There was the unknown ahead, perhaps more hardship to come. But there was also something else, a sense of self-worth that no one could take away from us. A sense that we were doing something right, despite all the obstacles. I didn't know how this story would end, whether we would win the trial, whether we could save the center, whether we would ever reconcile with my family. But for the first time in years, I felt truly alive, and it was worth all the loss.